In China, the textile industry has always been strong. In the first 3 quarters of 2011, its output rose by 29% to $623 billion. Meanwhile, Vietnam's textile and garment industry has been developing rapidly in recent years. In 2011, its exports were targeted to reach $12.5 billion. There is a large number of textile and garment enterprises, one of which is the state-owned Vinatex. The Vietnamese government has always been supportive of this industry and is constantly encouraging more foreign investments by offering strong incentives.
Compared to China, Vietnam is more dependent on its agricultural sector for her GDP. In 2004, agriculture and forestry accounted for 21.8% of Vietnam's GDP, and between 1994 and 2004, the sector grew at an annual rate of 4.1%. Its share of economic output has declined in recent years, falling as a share of GDP from 42% in 1989 to 26% within the next decade, as production in other sectors of the economy has risen. This is in line with China, as developing countries tend to shift the focus from the agriculture sectors to manufacturing industries and services as their economies undergo modernization. Agricultural employment was much higher than its share of GDP. In 2005, approximately 60% of the employed labor force was engaged in agriculture-related sectors. However, agricultural products only accounted for 30% of exports.
Seafood is an important food item for most of the world, and in recent years, consumer demand for seafood has increased despite the global financial crisis. China and Vietnam, both being important exporters of seafood, have been striving to meet this increased demand. However, as standards of living in China rise, China has increasingly become an importer of seafood from Vietnam, accounting for 20% of Vietnam's total seafood export value. Furthermore, Vietnam has a favorable geographic location for supplying seafood products to China. Vietnam also provides seafood for 3 of the world's most prominent economies, the US, the EU, and Japan. As such, Vietnam has become a key exporter in terms of seafood.
Vietnam is rich in oil and is the third largest oil producer in Southeast Asia. Its Phu Han Basin might contain about 5.4 billion barrels of oil, and its recent oil find in the waters of northern Vietnam has made its competitor, China, even more worried. The oil find is said to reserve about 181 million barrels of oil. China's worries are then justified as they have yet to find a new source of oil. Clearly, Vietnam and China are strong competitors in the regional oil market.
Both Vietnam and China are countries with a well-developed secondary sector focused on producing goods and services at a low cost to the multinational companies that have decided to produce their goods there. It is generally seen as more economical to produce goods in China or Vietnam since the cost of production there is low. Between the two countries, China has been the more dominant player. However, Vietnam is quickly taking over China's place in production because of the rise in wages in China. Even though the wage rises bring benefits to Chinese labor, firms have been forced to pass on the increased expenditure to consumers. As a result, commodity prices have increased exponentially. As such, many firms have no choice but to shift production to Vietnam so as to try to reduce their reliance on China and to maintain their grip on profits. Even though wages in Vietnam have also been rising, the wage rises in China have been comparatively more rapid and sustained so as to prompt firms to seek business elsewhere.
Vietnam is committed to the long-term objective of global economic integration through participation in APEC, ASEAN Free Trade, and World Trade Organization. Vietnam hosted APEC in 2006 and joined WTO in 2007. They are currently making progress in implementing WTO accession commitments such as improving the transparency of trade regulation. It does, however, poses a challenge to Vietnam due to its socialist-oriented market economy.